Bonjour, everyone. Hi, this is Neshi Lokotz. Welcome to Communications from Home, which is my weekly live stream show. There's George, and here comes Paul, right in the middle of the show. Yay! I know this is a native live stream. Paul, please. Okay, so this is a native live stream because we're still having some issues with BeLive. And so welcome to my weekly show here at our Facebook fan page, our main business page. Today is Tuesday, November 19th. And I so appreciate you guys following me over here. Now, it's going to look like my other, the show that I scheduled with BeLive is going to be, waiting for it to go live, but it's not going to. So I really would appreciate it if you guys could help me to inform others about this late in the date change. We just got to roll with it, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my phone. I'm going to find our live stream, and I'm going to send it over to my profile, my fan page. And there we are. Wait, got to turn down the sound. All right. So I'm going to send it over to my news feed. And there we go. Yeah, it's just going to take a second. And I'm going to share it over to, I'm going to send it over to one of our groups. Over to the peeps. There we go. And then, let's see, gotta make bifocals. Gotta make sure I get the right groups. There we go. There we go. I think that's it. I know, right? Well, I wanted to make sure we get the show done. We're going to have to work with our partners over at BeLive. We've been having some, as you know, since Julie's show, actually. On Monday, we've been having some issues. So I'm just glad I'm here. We don't have all of those really good bells and whistles for our usual show, so I won't be able to show your comments on screen. But thank you so much for being with me. I am going to take a look to see who's all here. Looks like Julie Shumway Hill's in the house. Hey, Julie. I bet you had a good weekend, didn't you? Rob's here too. Rochelle is here. Hello, guys. And Lisa just joined us. Hello, Lisa. It's good to have you in the house, always. Oh, thanks. Yeah, you're right. She says, hello, goddess. Thank you so much. She says, trifecta of love today. You're my last stop. Yay. Well, thank you. And Tina just popped in too. Hey, Tina. Good to have you guys here. The show tonight, the topic is all about, it really is about our creativity. And have you ever noticed that you don't use pen and paper much anymore? Did you ever notice that? That we're really using most often some sort of device, whether it's our laptops or whether it's our phones or our iPads or something like that, right? And not too often do we find ourselves using pen and paper or pencil and paper. How many people have to go searching for a pen, searching for a piece of paper just to write on, right? And you're on the phone with somebody and they're saying, can you take this down? Here's this number, or they're giving you some sort of information and you have to jot it down, right? I tell you what, finding a pen in my house for a while there was like looking for gold. It's like, I know we have one around here somewhere. And so I don't know if you guys have ever done that, but I certainly have. And so, so did you know that your pen and your paper are connected to your creativity? Did you know that? I think that at certain generations, we remember that. We remember that. Younger generations may not have that kind of connection or that kind of awareness about their creativity that's connected to their handwriting. Or actually, what it is really more about holding the marker, the pen, the crayon, the colored pencil in your hand and actually making contact, right? So as I found a couple of articles, this is what prompted the show topic tonight. I found a couple of articles. They actually popped into my inbox, and I have to say, even writing the description of the show, I did it on Saturday night. It was right after a day of teaching Journey to Remembering, right? And I knew I had to get the promotion out for the show. And Julie was actually sitting across from me at my dining room table, and I was trying to get this piece done. And so I'm typing it up, and I think, this sounds pretty good, you know. And so I read it to her, and she starts laughing, and she says, ironically, you're writing this with your computer, so I had to put it in there. So you might have seen the comment in parentheses I have. This seems to be an oxymoron, as Neshi, me, used a laptop keyboard to write this show description. You know, so even with that, right? Even with that, it's kind of funny. We had a good laugh about it, at least. Hello, Tina. Julie says, an excellent weekend. I know, me too. I liked it too. Jackie's here. Hello, Jackie. And Julie just joined us too. Hey, Julie. It's good to have you here. Look, Julie, I'm doing a native live stream. Why? Because I was having an issue with BeLive. Yeah. It's a good thing we have the native live stream. All right, so the two articles that I have with me is one that's titled Do Better Work Using Pen and Paper by Stephen Moore. And the other one is five times when using paper and pen is better than using an app by Stephanie Voza. And it's kind of interesting that one's by a man and one's by a woman. And Stephanie, I don't know. I don't think that they're related at all, last names or anything like that. But it was interesting to me. Is that a coincidence or what? All right. So here's a question. Why handwriting makes you more creative and productive? And I'm sure that some of you could even make a really good guess at that, right? Oh, thank you, Julie. She says, looking good. Thank you. See, here's my thing about the connection between our creativity and using paper and pen or pencil. After I read the articles, I was kind of sitting there thinking about them, right? And here I was thinking about whenever I have taught space clearing. I used to teach certification courses in space clearing. And what I used to teach my students was that no matter what space clearing tool you're using, whether it's a bell, a feather, a drum, a rattle, anything like that, is that yes, it is the medicine of that tool that's assisting you, but here's the path, okay? The path is because you've set your intention, right, to do the space, and you're pulling in or drawing in creator energy, and it's flowing through you, intentionally using that energy to assist you with the space clearing. And so it's coming down through you, down your arm, through your hand, through whatever tool you're using, and it comes out through the tool. And so as the creator energy comes through us, it is blending with the medicines or the spirit of that's coming through. So it's coming through me, so it's picking up my medicine. And then from me, it's going through my hand down into whatever tool I'm using and picking up the tool's medicine. And so there's a layering effect as you're doing the space clearing, right? Okay, so that was my thought when I was having my celery juice, thinking about using pen and paper, longhand writing. And I was thinking, this is one of the reasons I think why writing longhand and using pen and paper sparks our creativity is because of that path that it's taking, right? Most of us sit down and we kind of get quiet. We think about what we're going to write. We make the intention what we're going to write. And many of us, we call in our spiritual team to assist us, right? And so we have this creator energy running through us, down through, just like a space clearing, down through us and out the pen onto the paper. And so personally, that is my 2 cents on why I believe that pen and paper sparks our creativity. If you're stuck with something, you're working on a project, or maybe you are a writer, right? You might want to take out paper, pen, and pencil, especially if you have a writing block. If you have something that is, putting up those roadblocks to your creativity, right? Yeah, that's my 2 cents. And honestly, the times that I use pen and paper is when I'm just starting a brand new project. What I do is I take out one of those big sheets of Post-it paper. They're really big, right? And I take out either the colored pencils or the markers. And I literally draw a diagram. Some people call it mind mapping. And it's like that for sure, but there's much more to it than that, because I literally sit down and I do a short meditation with it, and I call on the spirit to work with me, and then I start diagramming out, or literally drawing pictures and symbols and doodling and writing words, and pretty soon there's a plan coming together. You can see it, how things interconnect, and how things maybe need to interconnect, and I need to create something to bring them together, right? Yeah, I love it. It's a very creative way of starting a project. In fact, that's exactly how I started Star Nations. I knew we had the idea. I knew what we're going to call it, but what was it going to look like? What was it going to, how is the energy going to flow through it? And so that is what I did with pen and paper, or marker and paper. Yeah. How many people in the chat have done that? You might do it all the time. And if you do, let us know, and your experience with it. Or perhaps you are starting a project, or maybe you're in the midst of a project and have bumped up against a block of some sort, right? And so you can always get out the pen and paper, the markers, the crayons, the colored pencils and paper, and sit down and work your way through it, right? Create your way through it, actually. You know what? I am in such a rut. I'm seeing your comments, and I was going to click on it to bring it up on the screen. Well, I can't do that tonight. So Julie's saying, oh, writing by hand, I think that requires me to be more present. Yes, I think it is present, a gift of energetic presence. I love handwritten letters. Interestingly, I write all my articles by hand first. See, and that's something. I know, and you're not the only one, Julie, that does that. Some people, they might not write the entire article by hand, but they sit down and they write their points that they want to make in that particular article by hand. But yeah, you're right. And channeled writing, I work with pen and paper all the time with channeled writing. I know some people can do it through a keyboard, and I have done that too. But it is, for me, it flows so much smoother and faster if I've got pen and paper. I've got a 3-ring binder with loose leaf paper. That's hard to say. Loose leaf paper, and so I keep a binder of that. And yeah, And you have certain pens too. Did you notice on the promotion that I did for this show showed a fountain pen, right? How many people have ever used a fountain pen for their writing? Um, we all have our favorites, right? Our favorite kind of pens. And how many people still handwrite their journals, right? Julie Shumway Hill is saying, I always write longhand. The words flow better. And she's a poet, you know. She also writes novels too. But that is, I think it's the connection. I do. Lisa says, spirit inspires me to journal. The thoughts flow easier. I so agree. And do you think that this is this connection that we are aware of, right? Do you think it comes the understanding and the deeper meaning of it, right? Do you think other communities may even do their handwriting, their long handwriting, and not, be aware of that connection, but they enjoy doing it, so they do it, right? Yeah, I think that might be true. Tina says, I'm writing notes of info. I think it's interesting and true. Yeah, I do too. When I am in any kind of class, where I'm learning something, right? I always take notes in pen and paper. I know that there's a certain generation where they started using their laptops or their iPads to take notes, and they type really fast. They do. And they have their own shorthand, of course. And so do we, right? Those of us that still do the longhand, we have our own kind of way of shortening up words, and mine has lots of arrows in it and lots of doodles along the side. I do that too. And Rochelle said, I do write longhand. Yeah. Do you remember when we were kids, they actually had writing class where you had to learn how to write on lined paper, certain lined paper, and you had to learn how to make the letters correctly and all that? I remember that. But my handwriting doesn't look like that. Mine is a combination of printing and writing. My mother does not like my handwriting. All right. So Stephen Moore, he goes on to say that he says he says, quote, it has given me an uncluttered way to connect with my thoughts on an emotional level. It also allowed me to study my own thought process. Now, see, that was one sentence where I had to sit back and think, it's so true. Because if we looked back at something that we've written, that we can actually see how we work our way through it, both mentally and emotionally, right? If you're journaling, you'll see that. If you're just doing, class notes, you might not. Although you want to pay attention to the notes that you put on the side, because a lot of times those are reflective of what's going on in your present moment, right? So I thought that was really, really insightful, is that we can actually track both our thought process and our emotional process through the longhand writing, and how we write and what we write. There's some people who don't like handwriting because they're not legible. They can't even read their own handwriting, and so they end up typing most often, or printing, right? Yeah. But you know what? If it's not a thank you note, or a specific kind of card that's going out in the mail, that I've handwritten a note in, I don't care if I cross things out. I don't care if I misspell something. And like I said, I have arrows and things circled or highlighted, and yeah, it looks like it's a mess. But when I look at it, it makes sense to me, right? Rob is saying, I've switched over to keyboard and computer. Paper just becomes clutter. But if I'm doing candle work, I do that with pen and paper. Yes. Yeah, I think that that's a good balance, though, don't you think, Rob? I think it's a good balance between, depending on what you're working on and what you're writing. There's nothing wrong with using a computer, a keyboard. I think it depends on what you're working on and what stage maybe you're working on it with it. Much like Julie, I do some handwritten stuff first, and then I sit down at the keyboard and then write up my typed up outline. Then I start filling it in when I write an article for the magazine. Yeah, Julie's saying calligraphers learn the art of it and practice, practice, practice. Yes, they do. Yes, and beautiful, isn't it? The way the art that they use. Rob says, also, I can't write fast enough and my penmanship sucks. Yeah, I know what you mean. And that's why I think we end up with some sort of shorthand, right? If it's just for us, for ourself, I don't think that really matters as long as we can decipher it, right, later. Yeah. Yeah, because I've picked up shorthand or shortened ways to write things. I'll put one in the chat just for. Okay, this is my shorthand for within or without, and some of you will recognize it. It's social workers sometimes use this kind of shorthand, right? Rochelle says, I wanted to take notes during Journey to Remembering, but that would have been counterproductive because I would have been in my mind all the time. Exactly. Yeah, I think you're right. Absolutely right, Rochelle, is that I think there's a time and a place for it, right? And you're right that if you would have been taking notes, you would have been more in your mind, in your head, than remembering what was floating to the surface, those memories from the heart, right? Yeah. And that's okay because, I promised that I was going to be doing some Zoom classes that's going to have the same information. So you can always go back and take those notes if you want to, Rochelle, now that you've been through the class, right? Lisa's saying, my husband brings me home nice pens from work because it's one of my obsessions. Oh, my husband does kind of the same thing, but his pens are like coming from like the bank, the post office, the vet's office, any place that gives away free pens. Yeah, he grabs a pen or two because, like I said, they're hard to find around my house. Hey, Jane's here. Hello, Jane. Julie says, I have favorite pens for journaling and other pens for articles and poetry. What a meaningful topic. I know, sometimes we just we don't take time to ponder, right? Certain things that are in our lives. And when I saw these two articles, I was thinking, wow, when I journal, I longhand it. Whether it's my dreams or whether it's, something that has occurred during the day that I want to keep track of, right? I journal it. And I also have a three, not a three, I got my 3-ring binder for my channeling notes, but I also have a notebook, with the wire, and you can tear out the pages. I always do one of those whenever I have a telephone conversation that I need to take notes on for Star Nations or for my mom with medical people, and that I have several of those that I can reflect back on to past meetings. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm always really organized and I know exactly where which notebook the note is in, but I know it's in one of them, right? And I have tags in there too to let me know at a quick glance. Those are my mastermind notes, or Those are the notes with show hosts or contributing writers, right? Yeah. So my shorthand for with, in, and without. So I don't write out the whole word, right? So, I think we all develop that. Now, there's something else that the Stephen Moore had wrote that I had to go, there's something to this. He says that there's an actual science behind the MRI scans that have revealed that handwriting increases neural activity in certain sections of the brain. Did you know that? That handwriting has certain sections of the brain that we'll put it like this, it lights up. All right, we're using certain quadrants of our brain in handwriting that we don't get to use when we're at a keyboard. I found that fascinating. So that's why I think that even when you're using coloring, I did a show several years ago on about adult coloring, right? Those coloring books for adults. I think that this experiment that they did with MRI would also say the same thing about the coloring books, that we're using a certain part of our brain when we're using anything that has that creativity, that pen to paper. Interesting, fascinating, right? And he quotes an author, his name is Patrick McLean. He says, Patrick writes in the defense of longhand. He says, as much as I love technology, it drives us to distraction. A pen and paper has but one functionality. It captures the marks I make so that they can be referred to at a later time. So it keeps us in the present moment, much like what Julie said. When you're writing with pen and paper, right? And when we're using a laptop, it's really easy to delete, recreate, highlight, move, right? Cut, paste, put it in different order. That's a whole different kind of way of creating. That's why I think that it's okay. I think it's a balance, that if you do some handwritten stuff and you also do some keyboard items, I think there's a balance in that. Don't you? Do you feel that way? Because that's what we're striving for all the time, right? Is balance. Rochelle's saying wow about the MRA. Julie says there's are also those who analyze handwriting for psychological and emotional traits. Some law enforcement use it for profiling. Yes, they do. And there's people who are very gifted in intuition and readings and that sort of thing. And you can actually have a reading done on your handwriting as well. Yeah. I was, as a psych major, fascinated with that, Julie. Fascinated with it. And you're right, the FBI uses it all the time for profiling. And so, if you look at how you sign your name and how, where you cross the T and how you do your loops, or if you close the tops of your letters or not, it all is a part of you. Whereas a keyboard isn't, right? Yeah. Julie Shumway Hill says, when I type, I think in letters, not words. Oh, good one. Yes, you think in letters and not words. Yeah. Although I have to say that there are some people who type that think in words, and they're really fast in their typing, right? It's much like speed reading. People who read really fast, they don't read word by word. They read by paragraphs or even pages. And so I think it really, I think it depends on what part of our brain that we're using and how often that part of our brain is exercised. Mm-hmm. I think this topic is juicy. I love it. All right. So the thing is that when we're working from pen to paper, really there's no restrictions except for the ones that we put on ourselves, right? Some people, they really those are the ones that color within the lines, my aunts had beautiful handwriting, right? They had beautiful handwriting, very script handwriting. They very seldom did they print, right? And I look at a letter from my aunt written years and years ago to my mom, and I compare it to how I write. And mine, like I said, mine is a combination of printing and writing, but that was what I did way back when, grade school. Mm-hmm. Julie is replying to Julie. Julie Hedges replying to Julie Shumway Hill. She says that's a great thought about, when typing, Julie types or thinks in letters rather than words. Rob is saying it's called graphology. I studied a bit in high school. So there you have it. Julie Hedges says, wondering what my handwriting reveals about me. We could probably do another show on that. We'll find somebody who does some handwriting analysis. Don't you think? That would be fascinating. Maybe we could take some samples, right? Mm-hmm. All right, so the other article by Stephanie Voza, she says that it's easy to find an app or a software platform to help you run your life. Making pen and paper feels old school, and it does, doesn't it? She says, but paper products offer advantages that tech does not. And so here she's got 5 of them. She says that whenever we want to recall something, is that we have better recall when we actually write it longhand rather than typing it. When we type it, we're typing it into like our phone or into our iPad or something like that, like in notes, right? For those of us with iPhones. And so we don't really remember much of that list. But if we actually write it out, chances are we're going to remember much of that list, right? And it's still portable. The grocery list, if I remember it, to stick it in my pocket or my wallet, then it goes with me. But if I forget it, I know that I can remember most of it. There's some things that I will forget, but I remember most of it. And Paul would say, but if you would have put it in your notes in your phone, you would have had it with you. You remembered all of it. Yeah. Oh, Rob's saying both rely on muscle memory. You think in words when you become a real typist, about 40 words a minute, and the minimum to get off the production floor and onto the AC floor. That's true. That's true. Remember when it was 60 words a minute was like, yeah. You knew that you're going to go places if you could type 60 words a minute. Madonna's here. Hello, Madonna. Good to have you with us. I hope you're feeling better. Yeah, Rob is also saying to Julie is that it says that you're immensely talented and gifted. That is true. She is. All right. So Stephanie Voza used a term here that I was just like, got to find out more about that. She says that that one of the biggest assets that paper can provide is that it stimulates our reticular activating system. reticular activating system. Yeah. And she says that this reticular activating system is responsible for filtering out unnecessary information, which is helping our memory. So instead of taking notes on a smartphone or a laptop, she's suggesting that we actually use pen and paper to record important information that we want to remember, right? Or at least remember where you put it. That's another one. Remember where you put it. And she also says that working with paper can make certain tasks faster. So if we keep a short list short, in memorizing lists, they say never more than 7 items, right? And to put them into some sort of order for yourself, and that you're going to be able to remember them. So, whether it's alphabetical or mnemonic or something like that, that you're going to, it's also working your memory. It's also working with cross-referencing stuff in your brain. It keeps us agile mentally, I think. Julie, she goes, or I could be on the FBI's most wanted list, and she's laughing. Madonna says, hello, Neshi. Longhand is how I wrote my book before typing it out. I'm not sure if it would have flowed as easily if I had typed first. I'm much better, thank you. Took a bit longer than I thought, though. I know what you mean. I'm glad you're feeling better, Anna. I'm glad you are. Yes, and I remember our conversation about your early writings of the book, and how you pulled that together in longhand, and I agree with you that it would have been a much different feeling of your book, I think, that if you hadn't done it in longhand first, right? Yeah, because I think that we connect emotionally. I think we connect with that kind of writing. We might not know why, but we do. All right, so they also say that when we're trying to retrieve information from our memory, that if we've written it down, chances are that we'll be able to recall it better than if we've seen it just in typewritten form, or if we've typewritten it. Isn't that interesting? I find that fascinating. But also, if we really need to focus on something, a certain topic or a certain area of interest, that if we actually write out our notes by longhand, that our focus is much better. And I think it goes back to what Julie had just said, is that it keeps us into the moment. It keeps us in the moment. Yeah. Here she says, when you're working with paper tools, your focus is increased and you can't attempt to multitask. Which is kind of true, don't you think? Because I had to sit down and kind of think back. It's like, okay, if I'm longhand writing something, am I multitasking with something else? And I couldn't think of one. Now, it doesn't mean that I haven't. I just couldn't think of one. Possibly drinking coffee or tea. But, if I'm on my computer or on my phone or iPad, if a message pops in, I'll take a look at it, right? Yeah. So you're multitasking, or something will occur to me is like, oh, I got to put that on my calendar or check my calendar. And so I pop up my calendar and work on that for a little bit. So it's like, I'm working on this and a little bit there and a little bit here and a little bit there. And so, but it's that because I'm looking at one screen, right? Does anybody else do that? I know I do. Robert says, I can see that as a written word is a pictographic. Yeah. Yeah. So we use a different part of our brain for the imagery, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. But that multitasking one, I had to sit back and kind of laugh at myself about that one. because it's true. You know, when I'm on my keyboard on my laptop, I'm multitasking all the time. When I'm longhanding writing something, I'm not. And here's the other thing is that if you're trying to keep track of certain things, let's say you have let's say you're having a class at your place, like we just did this past weekend. We had a class here at the academy. And as most of you know, that it does take a little bit of organizing and planning, right? Not just to have the class, but other things, like things here at the school that had to get done before everybody showed up. Um, Preparing the composting toilet. That's really important. Making sure we had enough filtered water. Getting the flowers for the altar. All these little things that didn't have anything to do with the curriculum per se, right? But the physical class. And then there's things on the home front that need to be taken care of because I'm not going to be home to do certain things, right? So who's taking care of mom and making sure she gets her snacks and that sort of thing if I'm not there in time, right? And then we also had to do the grocery shopping, both for the class, for the snacks, yum, right? But we also had to make sure, Paul and I had to sit down and plan out the weekend's menu for the meals at home because we also had Karen with us. So making sure that we had food for her. And Julie stayed with us. So making sure that we had the meals planned out so we knew what we were doing so that when I got home, Paul wasn't thinking, I didn't know what to make. Right? So I had lists, and Paul would write notes on the list, and so it keeps you focused, and it keeps those little things that kind of run around in the back of your head. That oh yeah, gotta remember to do that. Gotta remember to do that. That if I wrote them down, I could let that little thing go because I knew it was on the list and it'd get crossed off, which freed up some of my energy to focus on something else rather than that niggly little thing that keeps reminding me, don't forget me, right? Hey, Bobby's here too. Hello, Bobby. Rochelle says, yes, I do. She does that. Yeah. And but Rob is saying, a typed word is meant to be reread. Yeah, but so is a longhand word, so is a longhand word. I mean, how many times have you ever gotten a card or a letter from somebody, which probably isn't very often, but when you have received them, do you only read it once? Most of us read it at least once or twice. And depending on what it is, we might actually even keep it as a keepsake and reread it years from now, right? Remember all those love letters? Did you ever get a love letter handwritten? I did. They were hard to read. Paul's handwriting is not legible very well. And he'd run out of room and then he'd write on the edges of the paper, right? And and I tell you what, if I can decipher Paul's handwriting, I can decipher anyone's. And so yeah, so I think they read more than once, I think. Yeah. Lisa says, think of all the, hey, see, I didn't even read your note yet. She says, think of all the love letters where you can actually visualize the person saying it. There's a warmth versus typed, which is kind of cold. Yeah, well, it's not, I think it's meant to be a little bit more impersonal, maybe. But I also think maybe it's also in the way the person who's typing it is feeling at the time. Because I think we can still feel their energy through it. Because what about a really good book? Come on, we can feel the emotions when an author is really using very descriptive language, right? And bringing us in as part of the story. Yeah. Hey, Violet's here. Hello, Violet. Bobby's saying my longhand often turns into doodles. Yep, for other notes, and I do more colored pencil as art as I journal. Yes, me too. Absolutely. Yeah, I don't have as much time as I used to journal, but when I do, lots of times, yeah, I will use colored markers. Madonna is saying, Uh, some of my greatest treasures are handwritten letters and cards from dear family members who passed long ago. Right. You know what? What about those notes in the family Bibles? Right. Um, I have one of my aunt's Bibles, and she wrote in there when her brothers and sisters were born, when the first rung of nieces and nephews were born, and little notes about them inside of her Bible. Yeah. So I know what you mean, Madonna. You know that to see their handwriting, right? Rochelle says, I have a stack of cards, letters, and pressed flowers, all by my late husband. Oh, that's so sweet. Julie says, I have a beautiful long handwritten letter my dad wrote to me at my high school graduation, a treasure, and cards and letters from my granny who is now in heaven. Absolutely. See the art of handwriting um, is on the upswing. I think it's coming back into our world, right? And I know that some schools have taken cursive writing out of their curriculum, um, but I'm thinking that just like the 33 and a thirds vinyl is doing a comeback, right? Turntables. I think we're going to see a lot more handwriting too, for all the reasons that we mentioned here, right? Um, that's what my feeling is, and so it's something that we can all relate to, and I think that when we do that kind of longhand writing, um, depending on what we're doing it for, right, is that if it slows us down even a little bit, I think that's a good thing. And I'm speaking personally for myself, right? Because you're right, Rob. If I'm pressed for time and I'm writing fast, I'm misspelling words. It yeah, it gets messy, right? Um, and then I have to go back and try to figure out what word was that. But if it slows me down a little bit, I think that I think we're working a part of our brain that and our generation anyway, that we know what it feels like to have that part of our mind, and that creative part of us can blossom in another way, right? And perhaps we could even teach our grandchildren about longhand writing, or perhaps doing that kind of mind mapping I shared with you at the beginning of the show, to plan things out, right? It's a creative way for sure. Here's another piece. I know that we're almost at the top of the hour, but I wanted to mention this too. It says that many of us are drawn to digital tools because of the dopamine hit you get when you get a notification. So when a notification pops up, or when you get the sound of the notification, there's a part of our brain that releases the dopamine, the good feel, you know? And so it's addictive. It's addictive. It says you can get just as many hits from the dopamine when you use paper tools, such as crossing something off the to-do list, or using colorful tools to make notes visually stimulating. And we just talked about that, right? Using colored pencils or pens, or markers to do our notes. But how many people when you get the opportunity to cross something off from a list, what does that make you feel? How does it make you feel? Right? Yeah. Bobby is saying cherish notes from her gram, and handwritten recipes from her mom. Oh yeah, that too. Madonna says schools taking away cursive writing is like removing art and music classes. I agree. Suppresses creativity. Yes. And it is sad. But, I think that if we can make a decision, if we have the opportunity in some child's life to be able to offer that kind of memory, right? To offer that kind of experience, to give them a chance to do that long handwriting. Bobby says, love that. Our grandkids have cursive in Holman. Yeah. So anyway, what's it feel like to you when you cross something off your handwritten list? For me, it feels like accomplishment, right? Yay, another one down, right? And especially with those of us who are those gold star students, crossing it off on the list. Yeah, so it's good stuff. But here is something that Stephanie, the author, what was her name? Stephanie Voza. She says, when you partner paper with your devices, you get a better balance professionally and personally. When you partner paper with your devices, you get a better balance. And I think we talked about that, right? Julie handwrites her articles first. I do at least my outline in points that I want to make in longhand. Madonna wrote the first draft of her book in longhand. And so I think that this is because eventually what we do is we take those handwritten items and then we enter them into a computer, right? Yeah, and we turn it into something that can be read, as Rob said, more than once. In other words, it's easier to replicate it, to send it out for others to read. Yeah, good one. We're at the top of the hour. Isn't it fun? I saw that topic and I thought, I want to talk about this. I want to have a spiritual conversation about it because I can understand how our spirit, our soul, is flowing through onto that paper. I do. Yeah. And so the next time you do any handwriting, think about this show and what we shared, and perhaps you'll find it a deeper meaning to it, right? Yeah. So before I let you go for the evening, I want to share with you a couple things about what's coming up for the rest of this week. I know it's only Tuesday, guys. So tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time is a spiritual roundtable. And we're going to be talking about the card draw that I do in the morning. And so it's going to be that group card draw. And so having a spiritual conversation about that. That's at 3 p.m. here at the Star Nations Magazine live stream shows and publishing page. And then later in the evening, Soul Connections at 7 p.m. Eastern Time with Polly Jola Bay. It's an evening of healing and divine messages, right? And then that's on Wednesday. And on Thursday we have a special show from Connie Shearwater, The Spiritual Mysteries of Life. Her show was the first Thursday of the month, and we had some issues with BeLive. And so we're going to bring her back on Thursday. And she wants to do her another show about the I Am Presence, and another layer of that, because she's really helping us to really take in, remember, and understand what that phrase I am means for all of us, right? And so that's going to be on at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Thursday, the 21st, on her fan page, The Spiritual Mysteries of Life. Yeah, there we go. Good. And I still have 3 minutes. I have 3 minutes that I can share something else with you. Hang on, got to get a drink. It's good water. Okay, so what I want to share with you is a little bit of a reminder is that the November issue of the Star Nations magazine is available. And there's many articles in there that are all about November. And November is Native American Heritage Month. And so what does that mean? It means that we Native Americans get to share information with the general public so that you have a chance to know a bit more about this culture. And so in the Star Nations magazine, we have 2 articles. One article is by Tony Charette, and that is Native American women Two-Spirit style. And it's a really good article because the concept of Two-Spirit is one that's been kind of used a lot and has been kind of complicated. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It has become very complicated. And Tony takes some time to help us to understand what does that really mean and what did it mean for our ancestors so that we can understand what it means for us today. Okay, it's a really good article. Really makes you stop and think. And then my editorial is about the murdered and missing Native American women across Turtle Island, which are in the thousands. And so that is kind of an eye-opener and kind of a provoking article about information, right? And so, but we also have articles about Thanksgiving and gratitude in the November issue. So if you'd like to get your own copy of Star Nations magazine, I'll give you the link to our website, and you can check it out and you can see if that's something that you would like to do. And it's offered in a couple of different versions. Digital, of course, for your smartphones and tablets, but it also is offered as a print-on-demand, a PDF, and also web viewer versions. And what is a web viewer version? That's what somebody asked me the other day. The web viewer version is so that you can read it on any of your devices, but it's not stored on any of your devices. It's stored in the cloud. And the cloud is account is with MagCloud, which is our partners for that. And so you have to open an account with them, and they will store your magazines for you in the cloud. Yeah. So, okay, Star Nations magazine. If I can spell November issue. Okay, there we go. There. Now, I just want to get caught up with you guys in the chat. Michelle says, when you're crossing off something on the list, it feels good. Yes, it does. And Bobby's saying, I am reading The Presence Process. Lovely book to be in the moment. Really? Who's that by, Bobby? The Presence Process. And Deborah just joined us, Clark Clemens. And so is Barbie. Barbie's here too, Cornell. Yeah, nice to have you ladies here. You're just at the very end of the show. I appreciate all of you being here with me this evening. There's something that I just love about the conversations that we have about spirit. It was spiritual conversations, and I love it to have time with you. And so I appreciate you to take the time out of your evening to be here with me. Join me again next week for Communications from Home at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and we'll have another chance to have a interesting spiritual conversation. I'll let you know what that topic's going to be about probably by Thursday. So, and thank you for anybody who's going to be watching the recorded show. I appreciate that too. And yeah, have a really good rest of the evening. Enjoy your Tuesday evening, and we'll see you back here next week, Tuesday, for Communications from Home. It's Bama Mina. It's Potawatomi for until we see each other again. Love you guys.